My grandson slipped me a note during dinner last Tuesday. His hands were shaking when he passed it under the table. "Grandpa," it read, "check the storage unit Dad rented last month. Unit 247. The combination is Mom's birthday backwards. You need to see what's inside before Friday." I looked up at him, but he wouldn't meet my eyes. Just stared at his plate while his stepmother, Caroline, chatted away about her shopping trip. That's when I knew something was terribly, terribly wrong. Let me back up. My name is Richard, and I'm 67 years old. I live in a quiet neighborhood in Winnipeg, Manitoba. 3 years ago, my wife Patricia passed away from cancer. It devastated our whole family, especially our son, Thomas. He was 42 when he lost his mother, and he took it hard. We all did. Patricia was the glue that held us together. About 18 months after Patricia died, Thomas met Caroline at some charity gala his company sponsored. She was 38, attractive, charming, and she seemed genuinely interested in him. They got married after dating for only 7 months. Too fast, I thought, but Thomas was lonely. His first marriage had ended badly 10 years earlier, and he'd been single ever since. He has a son from that marriage, my grandson Jake, who's 15 now. Jake splits his time between his mother's place in Toronto and Thomas's house here in Winnipeg. When Caroline came into the picture, Jake seemed happy at first. He told me his dad was smiling again, laughing more. I was relieved. I thought maybe this woman was exactly what Thomas needed. Caroline was sweet to me too, called me Dad, brought me homemade pierogies, asked about my woodworking projects. She seemed perfect. But about 6 months ago, things started changing. Thomas looked tired all the time. He'd lost weight, dark circles under his eyes. When I asked him about it, he said work was stressful. His accounting firm was going through a merger. Made sense, I suppose. But then I noticed other things. He seemed confused sometimes, forgetful. He'd repeat himself in conversations. Once, he couldn't remember where he'd parked his car at the grocery store. Thomas is sharp as a tack, always has been. This wasn't like him. Jake noticed too. During his visits, I could see the worry in the boy's eyes. He'd watch his father carefully, studying him when Thomas wasn't looking. But whenever I tried to talk to Jake about it, he'd clam up. Said everything was fine, just normal teenage stuff. Then came that dinner last Tuesday. Caroline had invited me over for what she called a family meal. She made roast chicken, mashed potatoes, the works. Thomas barely touched his food. He pushed it around his plate, his movements slow and uncertain. Caroline kept putting her hand on his arm, saying things like, "You need to eat, honey. Keep your strength up." Something about the way she said it made my skin crawl. That's when Jake passed me the note. I waited until I got home before I really processed what it meant. My grandson was asking me to break into a storage unit, to spy on his father and stepmother. The combination was Caroline's birthday backwards. How did Jake even know about this unit? And what could possibly be inside that was so important he'd risk getting caught passing me that note? I didn't sleep that night. Just lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking about my son's deteriorating health, thinking about Jake's frightened eyes, thinking about Caroline's too-perfect smile. Wednesday morning, I drove to the storage facility on Pembina Highway. It was one of those big, impersonal places with rows and rows of orange doors. I found Unit 247 on the second floor. My heart was pounding as I entered the combination. 421987. The lock clicked open. Inside, the unit was mostly empty except for 3 cardboard boxes stacked in the corner. I pulled out my phone and turned on the flashlight. The first box contained files, legal documents. I started reading, and my blood went cold. There was a new will. Thomas's will, dated just 2 months ago. In it, everything was left to Caroline. The house, his investments, his life insurance policy, his share of the accounting firm, everything. There was no mention of Jake at all. My grandson, Thomas's only child, had been completely written out. But that wasn't the worst part. The signature at the bottom looked like Thomas's handwriting, but something was off. The T was wrong. Thomas always loops his T in a very specific way, a habit he picked up from his mother. This signature was close, but not quite right. I'd seen enough of my son's writing over 67 years to know the difference. The second box made my hands shake. Inside were medical supplies, syringes, bottles of medication I didn't recognize, latex gloves, and a small notebook filled with handwritten entries. I flipped through the pages, my stomach churning. The entries were dated, going back 4 months. Each one detailed dosages, times, and effects. Increased confusion today. Speech slightly slurred. Memory gaps more pronounced. Forgot colleague's name at meeting. Balance issues. Nearly fell on stairs. Caroline was keeping a log. She was documenting Thomas's decline because she was causing it. I pulled out one of the medication bottles and Googled the name on my phone. Scopolamine. Used medically in low doses for motion sickness. In higher doses, it causes confusion, memory loss, cognitive impairment. In very high doses, it can be fatal. It's sometimes called devil's breath. My son wasn't sick. He was being poisoned. The third box contained surveillance photos. Pictures of my house, taken from different angles. Pictures of me at the grocery store, at the hardware store, at my morning walks. There were printed copies of my bank statements. How did she get those? A floor plan of my house with certain rooms circled. My bedroom, my study where I keep important documents. There was also a life insurance policy. My life insurance policy. I'd made Thomas the beneficiary years ago, when Patricia was still alive. The policy was worth $500,000. Someone had paperclipped a sticky note to it with a single word written in neat, feminine handwriting. Next. I nearly threw up right there in that storage unit. This wasn't just about Thomas's money. Caroline was planning to kill my son, and then she was coming for me. I took pictures of everything with my phone. Every document, every page of that notebook, every surveillance photo. Then I carefully put everything back exactly as I'd found it. I had to think. I had to plan. If I went to the police right now with what I had, would it be enough? A forged will, some medication, a creepy notebook. Caroline could claim Thomas asked her to pick up his prescriptions. Could say the notebook was her, tracking his symptoms to help his doctors. The will could have been legitimately signed during one of Thomas's confused periods. I needed more. I needed proof she was actively poisoning him. I needed her caught in the act. That evening, Jake called me. We'd never talked on the phone before. He always just texted. His voice was quiet, scared. Did you go? Yes. Did you see it? I saw everything, Jake. How did you know about that storage unit? He was quiet for a moment. I followed her. Last week, Dad was at work, and she left the house with these boxes. I thought it was weird, so I took my bike and followed her car. I saw which unit she went into. Then I waited until she left, and I tried combinations until one worked. That was dangerous, son. I know. But Dad's getting worse, Grandpa. He fell down yesterday. Just collapsed in the kitchen. Caroline called 911, but by the time the ambulance came, she'd already cleaned up whatever he'd been drinking. The paramedics said it might be a heart problem. They want to run tests, but I know it's her. I've seen her putting stuff in his coffee. She thinks I don't notice, but I do. My 15-year-old grandson had figured out what was happening and had been living with this terror, trying to protect his father. My heart broke for him. Jake, I need you to listen to me very carefully. Don't eat or drink anything Caroline prepares. Nothing. Make your own food. Get it from restaurants. Whatever you need to do. And don't let her know you're suspicious. Can you do that? Yeah, I've been doing that for weeks. Good boy. I'm going to fix this. But I need a few days. Can you hold on for a few more days? I think so. But Grandpa, Dad's appointment with the heart specialist is Friday. I heard Caroline on the phone talking to someone. Her brother, I think. She said something about how Friday would be the perfect time because everyone would just think it was his heart. Friday. 2 days away. Whatever Caroline was planning, she was going to do it soon. I spent all Wednesday night researching, planning, thinking. I called an old friend from the police force, Bill Henderson. We'd known each other for 40 years. He'd retired 5 years ago, but he still had connections. I told him everything. He listened without interrupting. Rich, he said when I finished, this is serious. But you're right that we need more. Judges don't like speculation, even good speculation. They want concrete evidence. Here's what I think you should do. He outlined a plan. It was risky. It was going to require me to be a better actor than I'd ever been in my life. But it might work. Thursday morning, I called Caroline. Put on my best concerned father voice. Caroline, dear, I'm worried about Thomas. He looked so unwell at dinner the other day. I was thinking maybe I should move in with you two for a little while. Help out. Make sure he's eating properly, getting his rest. There was a pause. Then her voice, syrupy sweet. Oh, Dad, that's so thoughtful of you. But honestly, we're managing fine. Thomas just needs rest. The doctor says it's probably stress from work. You know how dedicated he is to that firm. I know, but I'm his father. I want to help. Besides, you shouldn't have to shoulder this burden alone. Really, Dad, we're okay. Thomas wouldn't want you to disrupt your life. I made my voice wobble a little, like I was getting emotional. I lost Patricia. I can't lose Thomas too. Please, Caroline, let me help. I'm rattling around that big house all alone anyway. Another pause. I could almost hear her thinking, calculating. Well, if it means that much to you, I suppose it would be all right. But just for a few days. We don't want to impose on your time. No imposition at all, dear. I'll pack a bag and come over this afternoon. When I arrived at Thomas and Caroline's house that afternoon, my son answered the door. He looked worse than he had on Tuesday. His skin had a grayish tinge. His hands trembled as he hugged me. Dad, what are you doing here? Your wife invited me. Thought I could help out while you're not feeling well. Caroline appeared behind him, all smiles. Come in, come in. I've set up the guest room for you. It'll be so nice having you here. I'd brought a bag with clothes, but hidden in the bottom were 3 small cameras Bill had lent me. Tiny things, wireless, motion activated. That evening, while Caroline was making dinner and Thomas was resting upstairs, I placed them. One in the kitchen, tucked behind the cookbook stand, with a clear view of the counter and coffee maker. One in the dining room, hidden among the decorative items on the hutch. One in the upstairs hallway, positioned to see the bedroom doors. Jake knew I was there, but we'd agreed to pretend we weren't coordinating. When he came down for dinner, he just nodded at me. Hey, Grandpa. Hey, kiddo. How's school? Fine. Dinner was uncomfortable. Caroline had made spaghetti and meatballs. I watched carefully as she served everyone. Thomas's plate seemed to come from a different pot than mine and Jake's. When Thomas wasn't looking, I saw her sprinkle something extra on his pasta. Spice, she'd say if anyone asked. But I knew better. Thomas ate mechanically, barely tasting his food. Jake picked at his meal. I made conversation, asked Caroline about her day, complimented her cooking, played the grateful, oblivious father-in-law. After dinner, Thomas went upstairs to lie down. Caroline suggested Jake do his homework. Once we were alone, she made me tea. I watched her like a hawk. She didn't add anything to mine, just smiled and chatted about how nice it was to have family around. Thomas is so lucky to have you, she said, sitting across from me at the kitchen table. Not every son has a father who cares so much. He's my boy. Only child. After Patricia died, he's all I have left. I paused, letting emotion creep into my voice. Well, Thomas and Jake, of course. Of course, Caroline echoed, but something flickered in her eyes. Jake's a good kid, smart, takes after his father. Yes, he does. She sipped her tea. You know, Dad, I've been thinking, when Thomas inherits your estate someday, far in the future obviously, have you made sure all your paperwork is in order? I'd hate for there to be any confusion or legal complications. It can be so stressful for families. There it was, not even subtle. She was already thinking about my money. Oh, everything's in order. Updated my will just last year with my lawyer, Margaret Chen. She's very thorough. Everything goes to Thomas, and if anything happens to him, it all goes to Jake. Family first, you know. Caroline's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. Very sensible. That night, I lay in the guest room with my laptop, watching the camera feeds on the monitoring software Bill had set up for me. At 11:47 p.m., Caroline emerged from the bedroom. She was wearing a robe, moving quietly down the hallway. I held my breath as she descended the stairs. The kitchen camera picked her up. She went straight to a cabinet above the refrigerator, the one where they kept things they rarely used. She pulled out a small bottle and a syringe. Then she prepared tomorrow's coffee, Thomas's special blend that he drank every morning. She added the liquid from the bottle to the coffee grounds, measuring carefully. When she was done, she put everything away and went back upstairs. I had it. Video evidence of her tampering with Thomas's coffee. Bill had warned me not to confront her. Not yet. We needed to catch her with the actual drugs. Needed to document the whole thing properly for the police. Friday morning, the police would be here with a warrant. Bill had already laid the groundwork with his former colleagues, shown them my photos from the storage unit. They were taking this seriously, but I couldn't let Thomas drink that coffee. At 6 a.m. Friday morning, I got up before anyone else, went downstairs, and quietly dumped the entire container of coffee grounds down the garbage disposal, replaced it with a fresh container from the pantry. When Caroline came down at 6:30, I was sitting at the kitchen table reading the newspaper like I'd been there for hours. "Morning, Dad. You're up early." Old habits. Never could sleep past 6. I smiled at her. I made a fresh pot of coffee. That blend Thomas likes was empty, so I opened a new one. "Hope that's okay." Her face froze for just a second. Then the smile returned. "Oh, that's fine. Thank you." Thomas came down at 7, looking worse than ever. He'd vomited during the night, he said. Felt dizzy. Caroline immediately went into caring wife mode, feeling his forehead, suggesting he skip work. "Maybe you should go to the hospital," I suggested. "Have them run those tests." "His appointment is this afternoon," Caroline said quickly. "The specialist can see him at 2 p.m. We should just wait for that." "I really think we should go now," I pressed. "Thomas, you look terrible, son." "I'm okay, Dad," but his words were slurred. Whatever she'd been giving him, it was already in his system from yesterday. Just need rest. Jake came down for breakfast, his backpack ready for school. He looked at his father with undisguised worry. "I don't want to go to school," Jake said suddenly. "I want to stay with Dad." "You need to go to school," Caroline said firmly. "Your father will be fine. I'm taking him to his appointment later." "I'll drive him," I offered. "You look tired, Caroline. Why don't you stay home and rest? I'll make sure Thomas gets to his appointment." For a moment, I saw anger flash across her face. Then she composed herself. "That's sweet, but I need to be there, to talk to the doctors about his symptoms." The doorbell rang at 8:15 a.m. Caroline went to answer it, and I heard her voice rise in surprise. "Can I help you?" "Ma'am, I'm Detective Sarah Morrison with the Winnipeg Police Service. This is my partner, Detective James Park. We have a warrant to search this premises." I stood up as 3 uniformed officers entered behind the detectives. Caroline's face went white. "Search warrant? For what? There must be some mistake." Detective Morrison held up the paper. "No mistake, ma'am. We have reason to believe evidence of a crime is located on these premises. Specifically, we'll be searching for certain medications and documents." "This is outrageous." "Thomas, tell them." But Thomas was looking confused, struggling to follow what was happening. Jake had backed against the wall, his eyes wide. "Actually, officers," I said, standing up, "I have some information that might help. I've been documenting evidence for the past few days." I pulled out my phone and held it out to Detective Morrison. "Video footage from last night. The kitchen camera." Caroline spun to face me. "You've been spying on us? In our own home?" "I've been protecting my son, which is more than you've been doing." They found everything. The bottle of scopolamine hidden in the cabinet, the syringes wrapped in a towel in the master bedroom, Caroline's notebook, which she'd apparently brought home from the storage unit. They found the doctored coffee grounds in the garbage disposal. And when they got to the storage unit itself, they found all 3 boxes exactly as I'd photographed them. Caroline started talking once she realized how much evidence they had. Not confessing, exactly, but trying to justify. Said Thomas was mentally unstable, that she was just trying to help him. Said the will was legitimate, that he'd wanted to provide for her. Said the medication was prescribed by a doctor, though she couldn't say which doctor. None of it held up. The forensics team found her fingerprints on the forged will. Found her brother's fingerprints too. They arrested him the same day. Turns out he had a record. Fraud, forgery, served 2 years. Caroline had a history too, once they started digging. 2 previous marriages. Both husbands had died. One from a heart attack, one from an accidental drug overdose. Neither death had been investigated thoroughly at the time. Thomas was rushed to the hospital. The doctors confirmed scopolamine poisoning. Said if it had continued much longer, it could have caused permanent brain damage or death. They put him on a detox protocol. It took 3 weeks before he was lucid enough to really understand what had happened. Jake stayed with me during that time. We turned my spare bedroom into his room, put up posters of his favorite bands, got him a better desk for homework. He was quiet those first few days, processing everything. Then one night at dinner, he just broke down crying. "I should have said something sooner," he sobbed. "I knew something was wrong, but I didn't know how to prove it. I was scared no one would believe me. I thought maybe I was imagining things." I held my grandson while he cried. "You saved your father's life, Jake. You were smart and brave. You found that storage unit. You gave me the information I needed. Don't ever think you didn't do enough." Thomas made a full recovery. Physically, at least. Emotionally, it took longer. The betrayal was profound. He'd loved Caroline, trusted her completely. Finding out she'd been slowly killing him for money was devastating. He went to therapy. We all did, actually. Family therapy. Individual therapy. We needed it. The trial was 8 months later. Caroline was charged with attempted murder, fraud, forgery, and a dozen other counts. Her brother was charged as an accomplice. The evidence was overwhelming. My video footage, the medical records, the forged documents, the notebook detailing her poisoning schedule. The prosecution even exhumed her previous husbands, found evidence of poisoning in both cases. Caroline was sentenced to 25 years to life. Her brother got 15 years. The judge called it one of the most calculated, callous attempts at murder he'd seen in his career. Thomas sold the house. Too many bad memories. He bought a smaller place not far from mine. Jake decided to stay in Winnipeg full-time instead of splitting time with his mother in Toronto. He's 17 now, thriving in school, planning to study criminal justice in university. Says he wants to help people like his father, people who don't see the danger until it's too late. As for me, I learned some important lessons. First, trust your instincts. I knew something was wrong with Thomas, even when I couldn't pinpoint what. I should have acted on that feeling sooner. Second, listen to the young people in your life. Jake saw what was happening before any of us adults did. His perspective was invaluable. Third, family doesn't always mean blood, and blood doesn't always mean family. Caroline was legally family, but she was a predator. The family that matters is the one that shows up, that protects, that loves unconditionally. I also learned that evil often wears a charming mask. Caroline seemed perfect. She said all the right things, did all the right things. She fooled everyone, including me, for months. But there were signs, small inconsistencies. If I'd been paying closer attention. The way she isolated Thomas from friends. How she discouraged him from seeing doctors for his symptoms until she could control the narrative. The way she pushed me to update my estate planning. Looking back, I can see the manipulation. But in the moment, when someone is friendly and kind and calls you dad, you want to believe the best. That's what predators count on. They count on our better nature, our desire to trust, our reluctance to believe the worst about people. I think about the men Caroline killed before she got to Thomas. They probably had families who missed them, who mourned them, who never knew the truth. Their deaths were ruled natural causes or accidents. If Jake hadn't been observant, if he hadn't been brave enough to investigate and then trust me with what he found, Thomas would have been another victim, and then I would have been next. And eventually, probably, Jake too. Caroline wanted it all, and she was willing to kill everyone in her way to get it. Now, whenever I tell this story, people ask me what they should watch for. How can you tell when someone is dangerous? The truth is, you can't always tell. But there are red flags. Moving too fast in relationships, isolating their partner from friends and family, showing excessive interest in finances and inheritance, inconsistencies in their background or stories, being charming in public but different in private. Most importantly, pay attention when someone vulnerable, like a child, tries to tell you something is wrong. Jake tried to tell me in his own way. He couldn't come right out and say, "My stepmother is poisoning my father," because he was a kid and that sounded crazy even in his own head. But he found a way to point me in the right direction. Children often see what adults miss because they're not as invested in maintaining social niceties. They call things as they see them. These days, Thomas and Jake and I have dinner together every Sunday. We cook together, share stories, laugh about the good memories with Patricia. We've rebuilt our family, stronger than before because we've survived something terrible together. We know what we almost lost. We don't take each other for granted anymore. Jake graduates high school next year. Thomas is dating again, though he's taking it very slow. I keep working on my woodworking projects in the garage. Life is ordinary, quiet, normal. And after everything we went through, ordinary feels like a blessing. I'm 68 now. Some people might think I'm too old to have played detective, to have set up cameras and gathered evidence and helped catch a killer. But age doesn't make you helpless. It makes you experienced. I've lived long enough to know when something doesn't feel right. Long enough to trust that instinct. Long enough to know that sometimes the people who need protecting most won't directly ask for help. You have to be watching. You have to be willing to act. If Patricia were here, she'd say I did the right thing. She'd be proud of Jake for his courage. She'd be grateful Thomas survived. She'd probably also give me grief for taking risks at my age, for putting myself in potential danger. But she'd understand why I did it, because family is everything, and you protect what you love, no matter the cost. The day Caroline was sentenced, Jake asked me if I was glad it was over. I told him the truth. I'm glad she can't hurt anyone else. I'm glad Thomas is safe. I'm glad we're all still here, still together. But I'll never be glad that any of this happened. I wish Thomas had never met Caroline. I wish Jake had never had to carry the burden of suspicion and fear. I wish I'd never had to see my son deteriorating, never had to search through that storage unit and discover the depths of someone's cruelty. But we don't get to choose what happens to us. We only get to choose how we respond. And I choose to be grateful. Grateful that Jake was observant and brave. Grateful that I trusted him. Grateful that the police took us seriously. Grateful that Thomas survived. Grateful for every ordinary Sunday dinner, every normal conversation, every moment of peace. Sometimes in the middle of the night, I still think about what could have happened. If Jake had waited one more day to give me that note, if I'd dismissed his concerns, if the police hadn't been willing to investigate, how close we came to losing everything. It keeps me awake sometimes, the weight of those what-ifs. But then morning comes. Jake texts me a meme he found funny. Thomas calls to ask if I want to catch a hockey game. Life keeps moving forward, and I'm reminded that we're here, we're safe, and we're together. That's all that really matters in the end. Not the money Caroline wanted, not the inheritance she was willing to kill for. Just this, a father, a son, a grandson, making it through another day together. Watch out for your loved ones. Trust the people who care enough to notice when something's wrong. Don't ignore warning signs because they seem too outlandish to be true. Evil exists, and sometimes it sits across from you at the dinner table with a smile on its face. But love exists too. Courage exists. Justice exists. And sometimes, when you're lucky and brave and persistent, the good guys actually win. That's the lesson I want people to take from our story. Not that you should be paranoid or suspicious of everyone, but that vigilance and love aren't opposite things. Protecting someone means paying attention. It means trusting your gut. It means being willing to act, even when it's uncomfortable, even when you might be wrong, even when it's scary. Because in the end, I'd rather be wrong and look foolish than be right and lose my son every single time. That's what family means. And no amount of money, no inheritance, no estate is worth more than the people you love. Caroline never understood that. She saw us all as obstacles between her and wealth. But wealth without love is just numbers in an account. It's meaningless. Thomas understands that now more than ever. Jake's always understood it. And I've known it since the day Patricia and I brought Thomas home from the hospital 67 years ago, a tiny bundle of possibility and hope. That's true wealth. Everything else is just details.